Then, exactly a week later, it really broke loose. It was the night of July 26, 1952. At 10:30 p.m., I received a phone call from Ray Nathan at CAA. Hello.
Chop?
Yeah.
Ray Nathan, get down here right away.
What's up?
The radar, Washington National, is picking up unknowns.
Again?
The press is hounding me for a statement. I don't know what to tell them.
Dee, bring my coat and the car keys. Stall them off. I'll be right over.
A couple of guys from Life magazine are here with a camera.
Stall them, too.
What's the matter?
Radar is picking up unknowns over the Capitol. Don't wait up. At 11:10 p.m., Major Forney received a call from Lieutenant Colonel Thomas, Air Force Intelligence Duty Officer at the Pentagon, informing him of what was going on at Washington National. As I raced to the airport, I kept glancing up through the windshield, expecting to see the things, but everything seemed normal.
Am I glad to see you?
They tell us we need your okay to get into the radar room.
You can't get in, boys. I'm sorry.
We want some pictures of that scope, Al.
You can't photograph the scope.
Why not?
It's under security measures, classified wavelength, classified code names.
Here we are in the biggest story in history, and you're keeping us out.
Sorry, but that's the way it's got to be.
Then we're going over your head, Al.
Colonel Dick Searles. You can reach him at Metropolitan 89898.
Another one.
Look at them go. One of them is an airliner. It's a slightly different shape.
Did you alert the Air Force?
I called Air Defense Command.
What'd they say?
They're scrambling a couple of jets.
Same as last week?
Uh-huh.
Could this be caused by temperature inversion?
Inversion? That is an inversion, and it's different than the ground clutter we pick up.
Did you call the Air Force Command Post at Pentagon?
No, we work through Filter Center.
I'd better call them. Get me the Pentagon Air Force Command Post. This is Al Chop. I'm at Washington National. Have you heard about the unknowns here tonight?
We've been alerted. There's a blue flight on the way there right now.
Okay.
Washington Control to Flight 639, come in.
Flight 639 to Washington Control, over.
Washington Control to Flight 639, you're approaching traffic on your left. Can you see it? Over.
Andrews Tower to Washington Control. We show an unknown just to the left of Flight 639.
Flight 639 to Washington Control. We can see that traffic on our left, over.
Washington Control to Flight 639, what does the traffic look like? Over.
Flight 639 to Washington Control. It's a light, a blue-green light, over.
Washington Control to Flight 639, can you make out what type of craft it is? Over.
Flight 639 to Washington Control. No. We can just see a light, a blue-green light, over.
Washington Control to Flight 639, Roger, out.
This is Bluebird 1 to Washington Control. Come in.
The jets are coming on now. Washington Control to Bluebird 1, change course to 225 degrees. Bluebird 2, hold your course. Over.
Bluebird 1 to Washington Control. Wilco, out.
Bluebird 2 to Washington Control. Wilco, out.
They're gone.
Andrews Tower to Washington Control. All our unknowns vanished shortly after the jets appeared. Do you still have any of the unknowns? Over.
Washington Control to Andrews Tower, the same thing happened here. Out. Washington Control to Bluebird 1, all the unknowns had disappeared.
You say those returns are the same as those you got last week?
The same as last week.
At this point, Major Forney arrived with a Navy electronics intelligence officer.
Gone?
Like that.
As soon as the jets came on the scope, the unknowns left.
Bluebird 1 to Washington Control. We're going back to the base and refuel. Can't see anything around up here. Visibility is good. Over.
Washington Control to Bluebird 1, Roger, out.
Were they good returns?
Good returns.
Has the set been checked for malfunctions?
The radar equipment is in perfect operating order.
They're back.
Andrews Tower to Washington Control. They're back. Just as the jets left our scope. They dropped back in again out of nowhere. You got them? Over.
Those blips are solid.
They're good and solid.
Washington Control to Andrews Tower. Same thing happened here.
Get me the Pentagon command post.
They're all over the scope. 2 in the northeast quadrant, 4 in southeast quadrant, 3 in southwest quadrant, 3 in northwest quadrant. Over.
This is Major Fournet calling from Washington Control. Radar is picking up 14 unknowns again. The chief controller tells me the unknowns disappeared from the scope as soon as the jets came in and were picked up again when the jets left. The Navy Electronics Intelligence Officer confirms that the unknown blips are good and solid. I recommend a couple of more jets be sent up immediately to investigate. Yes, sir.
Andrews Tower to Washington Control. That's the way we had them. One just moved from the northwest quadrant into the southeast quadrant. It stopped over the White House.
They're scrambling a couple of more jets.
Washington Control to Andrews Tower. Roger on the change. Now it's moving back. Do you get it? Over.
It's back in the northwest quadrant. Over.
Washington Control to Andrews Tower. Roger. We've got a scramble out.
What are those?
Slight temperature inversion.
You can see the difference in the returns. One strong, the other weak. These unknowns are solid objects.
Red Dog 1 to Washington Control. We're approaching the area. Over.
Washington Control to Red Dog 2. Change course to 265 degrees. Washington Control to Red Dog 1. Change course to 114 degrees. Over.
Red Dog 1 to Washington Control. Wilco, out.
About 4:30 a.m., Major Fournet received a long-distance telephone call from Robert Gina of Life magazine. He wanted permission for his people to interview the pilots of the first scramble at Newcastle. Major Fournet decided that under the circumstances, it would be wise for him to take the call.
Washington Control to Red Dog 1. Change course to 315 degrees. Over.
Red Dog 1 to Washington Control. Wilco, out.
Washington Control to Red Dog 1. Come in.
Red Dog 1 to Washington Control. Over.
Andrews Tower to Washington Control. Our scope shows Red Dog 1 is right in the middle of the unknowns.
Washington Control to Red Dog 1. Can you see anything on either side or to the front of you? Over.
Red Dog 1 to Washington Control. Can't see anything. Wait a minute. I see him. Yeah, I see him. They're all around me. They're moving in on me. They're coming closer. They're coming closer. Coming right at me. Hold it. They're moving off. I'm at maximum speed. They're going away. They're gone. I can't see them. Red Dog 1 to Washington Control. I've been given permission to return to base. Over.
Washington Control to Red Dog 1. Roger. Out.
At 6 a.m. that same morning, I called Lieutenant William Patterson, the pilot of Red Dog 1, who had made visual contact with the unknowns. He could add nothing more to what he had reported to us over the intercom. Later that same morning, the White House placed a call to the Pentagon. Captain Ruppelt, who had flown in from Wright-Patterson and who was only beginning his analysis of the sighting, got the call from the White House.
Yes, sir. It appears to have been caused by temperature inversion. Yes, sir. We've had cases where radar blips have been caused by temperature inversion.
This was Captain Ruppelt's report to President Truman. But Captain Ruppelt had not been present at the Washington sighting. It wasn't until later that he learned there had been both visual and radar contact with the unknowns on that night. On Monday morning, an avalanche of calls from newspapers throughout the nation jammed the trunk lines at the Pentagon. The relentless pressure continued. We admitted radar contacts from the 3 surrounding airfields.
When did the saucers first appear?
9 p.m.
How long were they under observation?
6 hours.
How many were there?
14.
Could the pilot see any details?
No. In an interview which appeared in the Washington Times-Herald, Lieutenant Patterson, pilot of Red Dog 1, said he concentrated on one of the bright lights, but it outran him. I tried to make contact with the bogies below 1,000 feet, Patterson said. I saw several bright lights. I chased a single bright light. I was at my maximum speed. I ceased chasing it because I saw no chance of overtaking it. Under the insistent demands from the nation's press and the accumulating pressure of the public, the Chief of Staff set up a press conference at the Pentagon. I was present when General Samford spoke for the newsreel cameras.
Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat or menace to the United States. In pursuit of this obligation, since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources. Of this great mass of reports, we have been able adequately to explain the great bulk of them, explain them to our own satisfaction. We've been able to explain them as hoaxes, as erroneously identified friendly aircraft, as meteorological or electronic phenomena, or as light aberrations. However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve. We have, as of date, come to only one firm conclusion with respect to this remaining percentage, and that is that it does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate with to any conceivable threat to the United States. We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any agency of the United States.
When I left the Pentagon that evening, General Samford's words kept running through my mind. Credible observers of relatively incredible things. The theories of the skeptics could not stand up to the actual experiences of high-ranking military personnel, radar experts, airline pilots, and other responsible witnesses referred to by General Samford as credible observers. I started to walk through the streets of Washington, the words remaining with me, credible observers of relatively incredible things. I recalled, when I first joined the project at AMC, how I regarded with disbelief the whole subject of flying saucers. But piece by piece, the evidence had crystallized. Until now, in my opinion, there was no doubt as to their existence. Now, so far as I was concerned, it was no longer a question of whether or not there were unknown objects flying in our atmosphere. For me, the only questions that remained were, what are these objects? Where do they come from? To me, the evidence indicated intelligence behind their control, and by now the belief that their source was interplanetary was no longer incredible.
This is the Montana film, projected exactly as it was photographed. The objects are moving against a 25 to 28 mile an hour wind. This is the film in double frame or slow motion. A slight bounce in the movement of the objects as well as the tower is perceptible. This is due to the handheld camera. The film, analyzed frame by frame, shows the movement of the objects to be horizontal and steady.
We will now vary the action and size of the objects and also stop the action from time to time for your study. We have just made a jump cut in the film to an enlarged size and reversed the action. You are now seeing the objects exactly as they were photographed, but from a closer perspective. Analysis reveals that the objects are not balloons, nor any kind of known aircraft. The images are very different from those produced by any kind of birds at any distance. The shape, brightness, speed, rectilinear path, steady motion, and separation rule out various forms of optical atmospheric mirages or cloud reflections. Comprehensive analysis has eliminated meteors and other known natural phenomena. The possibility of airplane reflection has been carefully studied and ruled out.
This is the Utah film as it was originally photographed.
The image structure and maneuvers definitely eliminate any kind of known aircraft.
This is where Chief Photographer Newhouse, in his excitement, changed exposure. He believed that by changing density and giving the film more contrast, he could clarify the objects. The single object that reversed its course. The bounce is due to handheld camera. Now we study the action of one section of the film. We stop the action. We move in.
Within a 5-mile range, aircraft could be determined. In excess of 5 miles, the speeds are greater than aircraft can achieve, except in straight line speed runs. The movement here follows an elliptical or circular pattern. Microscopic examination reveals that the objects are well focused. Their size varies from 1/6 to 1/10 the size of the moon as it appears to the naked eye. Their form is circular and sometimes elliptical. This fits the commonly used flying saucer description.
Observe the object in the upper left corner. We move in to study the action. The object upper left will go out of frame on widescreen projection. Observe the motion of the two objects upper right as we rock them back and forth. Now we move over and up on the frame to make a closer study of the object in the upper left corner.
Examine this object closely. Compare it with those objects you saw in the Montana film. These films were taken approximately 2 years apart, hundreds of miles apart.
We drop back to the original perspective and resume. Now the section of the film where photographer Newhouse changed exposure.
Weather conditions, together with the persistence and motion of the formations, eliminate the possibility of atmospheric mirages. Photogrammetric experiments have shown that the images cannot be associated with any kind of birds at any distance.
Stop. Now forward again. Stop. We drop back to original perspective. Now once again, and for the last time, the Utah film.
The objects